Hello, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me because my headset is going in and out. So, Ted, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up, please.
Oh, I definitely can
Good.
hear you.
Okay, great, 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 great. I am so sorry, everybody, for the late start. I literally just got off of work maybe 5 minutes ago, which is why I look an entire mess. But before we get started, remember to hit that subscribe button. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. We have 328, no, 382 subscribers. Our goal is 1,000. Help us to make that possible. Also, I will be putting up links while the show goes on, but remember, you can also support me on Patreon. Patreon support starts at $2 per month. And remember, in February, we're going to have a Patreon exclusive show that you can only get if you subscribe for that $2 a month. Looking forward to that. We're going to get started, and I'm going to let my guest introduce himself.
Well, hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me on. I'm Ted Brown. I am down in Austin, Texas, and I'm with the Libertarian Party. And I'm going to be running for U.S. Senator in 2026 as the Libertarian candidate, like I did in 2024. Keep up the momentum for promoting liberty here in Texas.
So you're running against not Ted Cruz, the other one.
Right. I
Um,
ran against Ted Cruz last year. I was the better Ted, but I can't use that slogan this time because I'm the only Ted. So this time there's like a large number of people running. On the Republican side is Senator John Cornyn. He's challenged by Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. And on the Democratic side, there's Colin Allred, who's a former congressman who ran last time, and James Tallarico, who's a young state representative who's getting a lot of buzz because he's rather charismatic young fellow.
Right. So that sounds like a crowded field. So
It is.
usually when I start this off, I always say to all of my guests, I'm a leftist. There are certain things that I hold to. I
Hmm.
believe I'm going to hold firm to them. If we disagree, we disagree. If we agree, that's
Hmm.
great. But we'll try to keep it cordial. I'm, of course, a cordial person. Look at me. Do I look mean to you? No. But I do have some leftist policy I have to ask. And it seems like I'm always
Sure.
asking libertarians these questions because I just assume everybody else that appears on my show already agrees with me. And this show is not an echo chamber either. So
Hmm.
you'll always see candidates, Green Party candidates are welcome. Um,
Hmm.
well, Justice for All, they'll have their own show, but PSL, Libertarian, Greens, Independent. So if you're out there and you're running for office,
Hmm.
give us a shout out and we'll make sure you get on the show. But first, I want to talk about is why is it that you decided, well, you ran before you stated, why did you run before? And then why are you running now?
Well, it's always important for me to promote liberty because we're not seeing that with candidates from the Democrats and Republicans because they all promote in one form or another bigger government. The Republicans want more control over our personal lives with their culture wars, and Democrats want more control over our economic lives with taxes and spending. Of course, that's been merging because the Republicans want just as much government control over the economy as well these days. So it's really only the libertarians that are standing up for civil liberties, economic freedom, and a non-interventionist foreign policy besides, versus the massive amount of government that we're getting out of Washington, D.C. So I think leftists would probably agree with me on civil liberties, personal freedom issues, and real conservatives would agree with me on some economic issues. But the Trump MAGA people have just totally taken over the Republicans. So really, actual economic conservatives have really nowhere to go now unless they look at libertarians. So last time in 2024, I had a record number of votes for a libertarian Senate candidate in Texas, and hopefully we can, start with that and do even better because things are getting worse in this country because of the Trump administration.
And how many votes, may I ask, did you get the last time?
It was 267,000.
And how many people live in this? How many people voted?
Well, see, that's the thing. Citing the figure is better than citing the percentage, which was about 2.5% of the vote.
I
Uh,
know a vote is a vote, but I just
yeah.
want to get an idea of how large Texas is because I
Oh,
don't know
right.
the population size in terms of the voting population.
Well, sure. There's 17 million registered voters, I think, but a large number don't vote. So it's probably around 10 million people that generally vote in the presidential election year. Next year in 2026, it'll be fewer people voting because there's no presidential race. The Senate race and then the governor's race and such are the biggies in Texas next year.
Now because again, I live in Indiana, so I'm used to petitioning. Do you have to do petitions in Texas, or do you just say I'm running? This is a party.
Well, we do have libertarians do have permanent ballot status in Texas, and so does the Green Party. But we nominate by convention, which means that I would have to pay the filing fee, file my nomination paper, and then at our party state convention next April in Abilene, Texas, the party delegates need to nominate me.
So has is anyone within the Libertarian Party also running for the nomination?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so you're gonna get it. Okay. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't know how these things usually work.
Right.
Because every party is totally different from another. Um, and again, I want to make sure that I'm asking questions um that I would be curious about
Sure.
when you so you don't have to worry about petitioning, which is a very good thing. When you are talking to people, oh no, I'm going to backtrack that question. What are your most present needs in terms of your campaign? What would you say are the three biggest areas you're like, I need this, and I need this?
Well, things are just getting started this time. So, of course, I would love to have some contributions to help me pay the $5,000 filing fee. And I always need help with technical matters, like people who could help me with websites, media, social media, those kind of things. I'm kind of an old timer. I'm 65 years old, so I'm not as good with some of the tech as some of the younger folk are. So hopefully some people will help me out with more of that. Got some help last time and hopefully more this time so I can get the message out to even more people in different mediums that are available. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for now. But of course, the main thing is being able to talk to as many people as possible. It's tough as a libertarian. A lot of the media doesn't want to cover us. They turned into a horse race. They are covering a lot of candidates in the primaries, but then again, we're not having a primary, and they just want to narrow it down to those two candidates, the Democrat and Republican, because that's like the horse race is the or the that sort of thing, but that the media loves and that the public seems to like. And where's there room for the third candidate or a fourth candidate? And that's what this country really needs, because you can't really put everybody into two parties. There's just many more viewpoints than that. And those that really disagree with both the major parties really have nowhere to go unless they look at the alternative parties.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that. One thing you may have mentioned in your assessment of what you need, which I think is fundamental, is the volunteers.
Yes.
Now I live in Indiana's not a small state, but it's not a super large state.
Mhm.
Texas is a large state,
Yes.
large in terms of land size, large in terms of population. Have you developed a plan once you receive the nomination of how you're going to recruit volunteers to reach out to all those areas of Texas and what areas you're going to try to reach?
Well, I mean, I try to get volunteers all over Texas to put out flyers, put up signs, that sort of thing. But mostly, social media is very important to reach more people. I wanted to last time get on radio talk shows to talk to people because obviously that goes out to a lot more people. But again, very tough. There's like a freeze out of libertarians. I even hired a political consultant last time who had worked with Democrats previously, and he said, "Oh, I shouldn't have any trouble getting you onto some of these talk shows." and they wouldn't even call him back when he said who he was working for, because they freeze you out because they want that, either they're corporate media of some kind, they're owned by crony capitalists or whatever, or they just love that that two-man race that's like so competitive, and so much money is going to be spent. $100 million plus is going to be spent in the race, and it's really hard. The public's going to be hearing all these messages of just more government, and here I'm going to be here trying to show that there's an alternative promoting freedom, and it's really hard to get it out there. So suggestions are welcome. We there's plenty of ways of getting the message out. Some of it will require money. Some of it just requires people willing to help out.
Exactly. And I think another point that I really want to kind of hone in on is, and I always criticize third party candidates or alternative candidates for
Hmm.
this. It really bothers me.
Hmm.
Is I'm glad you're not waiting until the last minute to say, oh, gee, I want to run. Like, your party's convention is in April and you're taking steps now to prepare for that instead of saying, well, it's March. Oh, let me just throw my hat in the ring. I can't stand that. I can't stand.
Right. Yeah. Now's the time when we're recruiting candidates for the Libertarian Party. I'm also one of the candidate coordinators for the state party, and actually, we have a very early filing deadline. It's December 8th. We have to file by December 8th because Texas has the earliest primary in the country, like on March 5th. So they have us lined up with some of the deadlines that the major parties do because they have such an early primary, which really should be like 3 or 4 months later. Way too early is the Texas primary, because most voters aren't even thinking about politics that early in the year. But yeah, we're going to have hopefully a number of good libertarian candidates in Texas. Patrick Dixon, who's a very distinguished libertarian, is running for governor of Texas. And really, my Senate race and his race for governor are the two biggest offices in the country that are going to have libertarian candidates next year, just due to the population of Texas and how much attention often gets put on Texas, because in this case, there really will be some pretty exciting races.
Now, I do want to ask about um, what I call Trump's deferment of trying to redistrict Texas.
Mm,
Um, I don't know what you think about it, but I'm just going to say what I think about it. I'm
sure.
like, release the files. This whole, let's add all of these. And you're running for Senate, so it really won't play that much of a role in your race. But what I want to get at is Texas, to me, it's like a super red state. I mean,
Hmm.
I can't imagine, I don't know why Democrats even spend money there because I'm like, you're not going to, what are you doing?
Hmm.
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are people in Texas that are like, hey, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, that's. I think that's what the Democrats are hoping for, because there are a number of Democrats that are even giving up their existing offices to run for like statewide office. But on the redistricting, that is crazy. It's like obviously the Republicans just about everywhere just like do whatever Trump says, and that included the Republicans here in the Texas legislature and Governor Abbott, and they created what they hope will be five more Republican districts, even though it was very Republican to begin with the way they gerrymandered it in the first place, like 4 years ago. Now, for me personally, like the congressional district I live in the Austin area, is they're putting me in a new district that stretches all the way out to Midland and Odessa in West Texas, which is like 5 hours away, and have absolutely nothing to do with any of the congressman from out there. Knows nothing about what's going on in my area, and folks here in my area don't know much about what's going on out there. So there's like you should have like communities of interest together and geographically compact districts. Libertarians would certainly not gerrymander. We would just use a computer and not even look at the vote totals. We just would base it on population, starting from the northern part of the state and moving on down towards the southern part of the state. I mean, voters should be choosing the politicians. Politicians should not be choosing the voters.
That's
And
what it seems like. Well,
yeah,
of course, I think Trump is trying to he knows, yes, and I'm saying it, he's in the files and does not want to be
right,
impeached.
right.
So he's using this. to kind of pad his numbers.
Hmm.
But I was hearing that that actually puts seats up for play. And I'm wondering if that's true and if libertarians would consider running for those offices that are now in play.
Well, I would certainly love to find more candidates to run for Congress. Again, the problem is we have these high filing fees. And it used to be here in Texas that you could run for office without paying a filing fee. And we had large numbers of candidates all the way through the 2018 election, which was the last time we didn't have to pay filing fees. And starting in 2020, the numbers of candidates have started declining because people just don't want to put out that much money, except maybe for state legislature, which is like $750. Congress is over 3,000, and a lot of people just don't want to do that. And it's kind of hard to raise money. Obviously, someone that has their own money is fine, or if they have friends and relatives that can help them out. But it's really hard to raise money from the community when people are going to say, "Well, you libertarians don't do very well in these elections." But then again, how are we going to do well unless we get more, unless we run and unless we get people out there letting the public know that we're there and that we're an alternative and a legitimate alternative to the other parties. All we need to do is elect a couple of libertarians to Congress, and they're going to make a big splash there, especially if the numbers are really close between Democrats and Republicans.
That's a good point that you're raising. I do want to get back to the media section. And I don't know, um, you said you had difficulty getting on radio stations. And I'm wondering, um, did you contact and I will not use the word minority. I will not, I will just say black owned media.
Not specifically. I'm not actually even aware of which they are. That's why I had the political consultant, a guy that worked with Democrats, who certainly should know that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But
because
I'm
I
not
know
sure how many of those there are. Yeah.
there's a lot more in tech. I know in Indiana there's 10. And if Indiana's that small, we have 10, you all have to have more than
Mhm.
we do. You have to. Like that would just make because there's more black people in Texas than Indiana.
Oh, sure. There's plenty, and interesting. There's a number of black candidates running, like one major Democrat and one major Republican. But this is a state I don't believe has ever elected a black person from any party to statewide office. So it's really a tough state in that regard, and it's also hard if you're Hispanic. Also, and that's like a massive amount of people are Hispanic in Texas, but their
Yeah, you
their
might want
their
to
votes
look
are
into that.
suppressed, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a simple Google search. I'm almost guaranteed that there is one.
Hmm.
It's
Oh, I'm
got. I'm
sure.
like, it's got to be. But I do. I want to stay on the media
Yeah.
because I want to talk about the debates,
Yes.
how important they are, how mundane. Yes, they are mundane, but they are important.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just going to assume you did not get in the last debate.
No, in fact, it was very hard. They barely agreed to have a debate between the Democrat and Republican, between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. They agreed to like one hour debate only, and it was really hard negotiating any kind of terms on that. And in Cruz's case, he's like a professional debater, so he was a tough character for Allred to debate, and didn't do all that well against him. But I would have loved to have been in the debate because then an alternative view that you don't normally hear would have been heard, and that's going to be even more so in this race. Like Senator Cornyn's been in office of one sort or another for like 35 years. He's like an old timer that should be either term limited or retired, And if Ken Paxton, who's this controversial attorney general, has even been impeached as attorney general for corruption, even though he was acquitted by the state Senate. I mean, he's like someone who a lot of Republicans are kind of hinky about, and so it'd be great to debate him and the Democrats. I mean, I know one of the Democrats, James Tallarico, who's the state representative. He's my state rep in my district, and I know him, and he's a really nice guy. But again, he's never opened an economics book. So even though we personally get along, actually, that would be excellent. I could probably even personally contact him and say, "Hey, make sure I'm in the debate." But again, if the other side doesn't agree, if the Republicans don't agree, there won't be a debate unless they can. They probably that would be a deal killer for Republicans. They just do not want libertarians around because we remind voters that the Republicans have given up on free market economics, on fiscal sanity, all the things they used to campaign on. Though they never did it, but they always campaign on it. And now they don't even bother anymore. It's just like power, power, power. Just control people, culture wars, all this. and they just don't want to have a libertarian out there calling them out on all of that.
Yeah, it's so, and this is leading to a question. I promise it's leading to a question. Um, it's so uh I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. Um Frustrating, that's the word I want to
Yeah.
use. As a third, which is why I just can't see myself running for office. So congratulations to you because you made the decision I don't think I could make, because I know it takes a lot, right? You have to um I'm hopeful that you have a campaign manager. I would hope so.
Volunteers are welcome for that as well. I pretty much have run my own campaigns over the years. I've run
Oh,
for office a number of times because I always want to promote liberty wherever I can. I'm not shy about promoting it, but again, it's just difficult circumstances all the time in trying to do so.
yeah, understand. And it's just a daunting task.
Hmm.
Talk about, and I know I asked that at the beginning, about what factors in Texas where you just said, okay, I've had enough. Ted Cruz is horrible.
Hmm.
The other person whose name I literally just forgot, he's horrible. Let me just get in here and give people a third option.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. I could run probably a similar campaign in every state as a federal candidate because we're talking about federal issues, running against just about any senator. I could probably run the same campaign in any state against any senator with just a few tweaks for local conditions or issues about that particular senator's record that might be different than anyone else. That's something that they might, some quirk of theirs. But in Indiana, where you are, I'd probably run a similar campaign. I mean, I did run years ago. I lived in California. I ran for Senate in '98, way back in 1998 in California, and it's like running. If you run against a Democratic incumbent, say, it would be slightly different than running against a Republican. But for libertarians, we have the same views. No matter who we're running against, like I said, personal freedom, economic freedom, and just advocating the least amount of government possible. And that's pretty much easy to do everywhere because it's sort of like an open field. Nobody else is doing that. And there's a lot of people that just are getting more and more frustrated all the time with big government. So I would pretty much run this campaign this way, no matter which senator I was running against or in which state. But again, the local conditions might make this race even more interesting, especially if Ken Paxton, this corrupt, impeached attorney general, is the Republican candidate in a Republican state. That might put the seat more in play, and more attention will be paid to the race. And the Democrats might even think they have more of a chance. And then maybe the expenditures will go up from 100 million to 200 million. Who knows? Because there's a lot of big money in these races because there's so many high stakes because of all the all the crony capitalists and people buying influence with the major parties and their candidates. So they just want to buy their own politicians, and I'm the guy that's not. I'm the one that's not beholden to any of these special interest groups or corrupt party leaders or any of that. And there's a need to get that the word out that people can find somebody like that. They don't have to like settle for these guys that are just another corrupt guy that is going to be against the people.
Do you think, and this is where in 20 the last election we had, 2024.
Right.
I don't know what I was on. I don't know if I was just not paying attention to what was going on, but
Hmm.
I had read a lot of polls that said Americans are frustrated with the two parties. They don't like them. They don't like that they're not answering their concerns, etc. So I thought, oh well, third party candidates got a really good chance of winning.
Oh yeah.
And of course, that didn't happen.
Right.
And I keep asking myself, why is it that people say that they're frustrated? And I'm talking about voters, not the people
Hmm.
that don't show up, but I'm
Right.
talking about the people that actually take the time to show up. They'll say they're frustrated with the two party system, and then they'll turn right around and vote within the two party system. I cannot figure this out.
I know some of the early polls in a lot of elections are showing people voting for certain third-party candidates. Like in 2016, we had the most probably the best libertarian candidate for being well known, former Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. was our candidate in 2016, and he was polling really well early on against Trump and Hillary Clinton. And then, as the race starts narrowing, and all the media barrage about everybody, you got to vote. If you don't vote for Trump, you're going to get Hillary. If you don't vote for Hillary, you're going to get Trump. And they just play it out that way, so the public gets scared that, oh my gosh, we're back to that lesser of two evils deal. And the numbers, the percentages kept going down. He ended up with our best vote percentage nationwide, which was 3%, but it was he was polling at 10% plus. And if we start getting numbers like that for real, if people started voting third party 10% plus in every election, that would be a big tipping point at that point. But you have to get up to at least that high for there to be a tipping point. And but the people this is what happened actually last year with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If you recall, he was an independent candidate, and he was getting a lot of support. And so the everybody was worried about him. The Democrats, because his name was Kennedy; Republicans, because he had some of the same kind of supporters that Trump did, who were these disruptor kind of people that like Trump, also like Kennedy. And so as the year went on, they were desperate to get him out of the race. And how would you do that? Well, he made a deal with Trump. They probably could have come up with some deal with Harris also, but Trump made the deal first, and Kennedy dropped out of the race. And even though he still got a number of votes, they saved themselves from having a relatively big, I think, third-party vote or an independent vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And they just try to, torpedo people however they can. And now Kennedy, apparently he made a good deal. He's actually got a position that he really likes and can have some influence, though I'm kind of skeptical of his abilities for this job. For him, it's like a dream come true to have this position. He's been advocating for these positions all along. So him selling out like that, he doesn't think he sold out. He would have just, if he would have stayed in the race as an independent presidential candidate, he would have lost. Who knows what the results would have been, and then he wouldn't have had his deal with Trump and his cabinet position and all that. So, see, they try to buy you off, and in his case, it worked.
And they have so much dark money to
Oh
do
yeah.
it with.
Mm-hmm.
And I just keep telling people, when you vote for the lesser of two evils, that still leaves evil.
Sure does.
You still have evil.
Yeah,
You just
exactly
have to
right.
break it up. Yeah, and I don't think people are to that point. I think everybody has to get to that point. But we as alternative candidates, like I'm running for something, alternative candidates have to do not that they're not doing a good job of saying it. We just need to pull our resources together to support more alternative candidates. Because unfortunately, or fortunately, or unfortunately, the way you see it, it does take resources, and I'm talking about financial resources.
Yes.
And here comes my next set of questions. Um, when you're setting to run for a federal office, there's obviously requirements that the FEC says you have to meet. Then there's, of course, the filing fees and taxes. Um, what criteria, do you have hey, donate up to, I think 5,000 is the limit. Donate up to 5,000? Because I know some candidates are like, no, I don't want people donating more than $20. And
Oh, I
that's
see
all
what you
they'll
mean. Yeah.
ask. And that's all they'll ask. Even though the limit is five, or the max is five, but PACs get around that all the time, and that's a whole different discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But some candidates will set that limit and say, no, you can only donate this much. Is your campaign doing that, or you just are like, hey, I'll take all contributions up to the max?
I will take all personal contributions. Again, I'm not accepting, big money, PAC money and that sort of thing. But for individuals, the maximum is 3,300 is the maximum that an individual can give. And I had one contribution like that last time. And but otherwise, most people, just without me saying it's give small amounts. We're giving small amounts. I mean, that's what libertarians are, not a rich bunch of people. And my supporters weren't. They were contributions between $5 and $100 primarily. A couple people gave more than that, which was very nice of them. And I'm going to, of course, solicit the same people again this time, and hopefully expand that more. But yeah, 3,300 is the maximum. And And also, if it's a married couple, each one of them could give 3,300. But this is interesting, though. You probably are aware of, like, under Citizens United, how these independent PACs can just start running ads on campaigns. And that is an interesting thing that happened in my campaign last year without me even realizing it was going to happen. So these, I think, some Democrats were financing it, some dark money Democrats, and they started sending out, started advertising for me without consulting with me, of course, because they're not allowed to. And they started attacking Ted Cruz and sending. They spent a lot more than I did. They spent like close to $200,000 sending out, running internet ads and running text messaging and sending out postcards and all this stuff. And no one could ever figure out who they were. They just were some totally shadowy pack. No one could figure out who ran it, who contributed to it, or anything like that. And they had some pretty nasty stuff. They were real rude and mean to Ted Cruz. And I mean, they were usually mostly right about what they were saying. But that's the kind of thing I don't like. I don't like attack ads. You know, I'm a very polite person. I just want to talk about the issues and say, you know, I disagree with Cruz about this and he's wrong about that. I don't like attack him personally and, you know, that sort of thing. And this is the kind of ad they were going to make, for some reason, to make Republicans think that I was more conservative than Ted Cruz on, like, issues like immigration, where that's one of my left-wing issues, where I'm very pro-immigration. And they didn't put anything in there about economics, which would have been accurate, where I was to Cruz's right on economic issues. So I even talked to this one reporter from the New York Post. I was saying, you know, tell these guys when you find them, you know, just stop helping me. You know, I don't think you really are helping me very much with some of the language you're putting out under my name. And then they were texting people, and even people said stop texting, and they kept texting. And people looked up my website and were sending me emails saying, and text messages saying, "How dare you keep texting me when I say no?" And I explained to them about this dark money, and they actually all understood because they'd all heard about this. Everybody knows about this big money and this dark money in politics. And there was one guy, some just average voter, I have no idea who he was really, just his name. He started doing research and to help me out and to help himself out just for his knowledge. And he couldn't find out who these guys were that were giving the money. And then the reporter from the New York Post followed up after the election, after the campaign filing deadlines, and she couldn't find out who was giving this money. So if that's happening on this somewhat small scale, and it was for me and for the Libertarian Senate candidate in Maryland also was getting the same thing going on. If you can imagine just what's going on with these dark money sources way up there in the campaign, where they're spending millions and millions and millions to promote the candidates of their choice. So you know, it's a bit daunting to think that you know, the average person trying to run for office with all this going on, you know, it's hard to have a chance. The average citizen just trying to get out there and, you know, make things better. And here we're faced with all this money out there controlling everything.
And what I don't like about, and Democrats are really good about this, they say, oh, we got to get rid of Citizens United.
Hmm.
Missing the point of, well, the Supreme Court has already said that's legal.
Yeah,
You could just pass a law, or you could just not take PAC money.
right. Now, the
It's like
thing is,
the simplest thing, and they won't do it.
it is. Well, the problem with Citizens United is, even if you don't want, if you aren't accepting PAC money, they'll just run ads. They don't have to coordinate with your campaign. In fact, they're not allowed to. They just go ahead and just run whatever they want. If they like a candidate, they're just going to run the ads, whether anybody knows who they are or not. So, like, say, for example, if they start running ads for like Senator John Cornyn, for example, they could say anything about him they want, like, hopefully from their point of view positively, because they're supporting him, say, but he wouldn't have any control over it. They might focus on some issue that he doesn't really want to bring up in the campaign or something and spend millions of dollars promoting him. So it's kind of a weird, the Citizens United situation is really weird. And, you know, I think it was probably decided properly constitutionally, technically, but as the result on our politics has been awful. It's been a terrible stain on our politics for like the last 15 years. And it just keeps getting worse. There's just more and more money and more billionaires that are, you know, financing these things. It's crazy.
And yet we still keep running candidates, which is a good thing. Which is a
Yes.
good thing. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. But I want to talk about some issues that I
Yes.
would probably think we most likely agree on.
Hmm.
Um, and you said one that I am very passionate about, and that's pro-immigration.
Yes.
Um, Texas is a border state for those of you that
Hmm.
didn't know. Um, Now Trump hasn't sent troops to, well, he's only doing it to Democratic
Hmm.
cities with black mayor. Oh, let me shut up. Oh boy. Let me stop right there.
No, that's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
I know it's correct, but I could just go on a whole rant
Hmm.
about that. But when it seems to me that a case could be made to tell the public, hey, these politics, they're just doing what, are they that pro-Trump in Texas? I don't, I'm like, wait a minute. This is good that you're, I don't know what my question is. So I'm going to reframe it and hopefully it'll make sense to me.
Hmm.
I think what I'm getting at is we're spending what, $1 million a day on ICE. I think that's the last figure that I heard.
Oh, is that
There are
all?
300.
Yeah.
I know, I thought it was way more. I'm like, is
Yeah.
that much?
Hmm.
Um, there's 365 days in
Hmm.
a year. Now I may have my numbers wrong, but I last time I checked, it
Hmm.
was $1 million per day. That money ideally could be going somewhere else.
Hmm.
It could be going to, I know Texas, like Indiana, has a severe homelessness crisis.
Hmm.
Every state is experiencing some levels of
Sure.
increased homelessness. That money could go for education. And I mean public education, not private school, parochial school type education.
Hmm.
I just wonder, how can the Libertarian Party of Texas make that case?
Well, first of all, you're right about the Trump is rather popular in Texas. I mean, this is like a 55-45 or 56-44 kind of Republican to Democratic state mostly. So it's not as bad as like Wyoming or West Virginia, which are like 70% Republican, for example, the two biggest Republican vote totals states. But the governor, Greg Abbott, is signed. He used to be just like an economic conservative that used to travel around the country to blue states and convince businesses to move to Texas. I kind of thought that was great. But now he's like gone full culture wars. He's gone full MAGA, full Trump, and he had his own Operation Lone Star that spent billions and billions of our state budget to send Texas National Guard troops down to the border to quote unquote clean things up down there and stop people from coming across the river, to stop, to arrest people for trespassing and in the on the public streets, these kind of things to try to discourage immigration into Texas. And he pretty much succeeded. He worked with they worked with the Border Patrol and all that, and there's very little of the immigrants coming across the border anymore. And that's what the people of Texas thought they wanted when they were voting last year, because it was pretty chaotic with all the immigrants like swimming across the Rio Grande and crawling through the desert and getting caught on barbed wire and all this, which was absolutely a ridiculous way for people to come to this country. And so, but that was being shown on the news all the time. People saying this invasion of our country, all these people like it's like they're fording the river and invading our country. But I mean, that's because the Biden administration set it up that way. I was advocating last year for, just be reasonable about how people come in. They don't need to come in that way. They should have been able to use a paved road and go to an actual building where there were federal employees that could check them in, and they didn't need to like swim across the river and all this stuff. That was ridiculous, and it looked ridiculous. They should have been able to come to any port of entry, any airport in this country. They could have flown to Indianapolis and signed in with the Customs and Border Protection there at the airport, because obviously international flights come in there, so they have people like that. Just in most of our airports in this country, or ports, airports, et cetera. They don't have to come into 5 towns in Texas and jam up the whole state. And, it's absolutely crazy the way that was set up. And it just like played into the hands of anti-immigrant people, saying our country's being invaded by all these weird foreigners that have different cultures and all this. And here, Trump just took that to town after his election, And the expansion of ICE, the expansion of immigration enforcement in this administration is horrible. I'm totally opposed to all that. I mean, the expansion of ICE to be the biggest federal law enforcement agency is totally unnecessary. They're just rounding people up. Well, you know all this, but I'm sure the public needs to know that they're rounding all kinds of people up who are not bad guys, and they're not even trying to determine who's a good guy or who's a bad guy. They're saying we're rounding up criminals. Well, who's a criminal even that they're saying they're rounding up? Are they going into prisons where they're criminals supposedly, and dragging them out of prison and sending them to another country? No, apparently not, because people are supposed to serve their sentence and then get deported. So they're calling people criminals who very well could have committed a crime 20 years ago, finished a prison sentence, and maybe had a deportation order after that, but they hadn't done anything wrong since then, and I see no reason to bother that person. And then another group are saying, well, you're criminals just because they crossed the border illegally or overstayed their visa, or their student visa or their tourist visa or whatever, and we got to throw them out because of that, even if they've been in the country for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, they came here as kids, whatever, just throw them out. Even people that have green cards or have immigration hearings that they're trying to legalize themselves the right way. They just are going after everybody because they want to do this thing that federal law enforcement always does, and that's the shock and awe deal, where they're showing they're the biggest, toughest hombres on the block, and they're going to blow this up and blow that up, and send 100 people to arrest one person, and just make things look like there's the raw power of the federal government. And I am absolutely opposed to anything like that. In fact, I'm absolutely opposed to almost all federal law enforcement. There are way too many federal laws, and these guys are just making it worse. They're just adding more to it. They're just calling everything an immigration crime, and then because people object to the ICE agents acting this way and just rounding people up, then Trump sends in troops to protect the ICE agents, and this is what's causing unrest in our cities. There wasn't any unrest until the government went there to cause the unrest, and,
Yep.
and now he's going to use the excuse of all the unrest to declare more government actions, and maybe even declare the Insurrection Act or declare martial law. And those are actions that I'm absolutely opposed to under just about any
Right.
circumstance. It's just
Hmm.
crazy, and I mean that's why I've got to every day in this campaign I'm going to be denouncing this massive increase in the size and power of government. That is not what I want, and I don't think most Americans want that. There's just a really loud group that keeps saying this is what I voted for, and keep out these awful people, and Trump's USA, 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 all this like fake patriotism. Basically, these are just like white people that want everybody to be white, Protestant, white Protestant, and English background or something is the kind of people they want in this
Yeah.
country. And that's not what this country is anymore. We're a diverse melting pot of a country, and I love that. Both of my grandfathers were immigrants. I love immigrants, and I welcome them here. And I think most of them are here to make a better life for themselves and their families. They have a lower crime rate. They help our economy, and all these like attacks on them are just lies and pretty much evil as far as I'm concerned. Just making all these folks into the enemies of the country when they definitely are not.
Yeah, absolutely. And my number was wrong. I was too low. According to Google, I typed in how much does ICE spend. It's estimated that their budget is $18.7 billion annually. That is way more than $1 million a day.
Right, and that's so far. I believe in that recent big, beautiful bill of Trump's that passed a few months ago, where they increased the number of ICE agents. I thought they were going to give them like $45 billion or something like that. Maybe it hasn't been spent yet, so they don't have that included in the
Yeah,
budgetary figures, but they intend to.
45, it's 45 billion over a 4 year sin
Oh,
four
okay.
four year since, might as well call it a sins. 45 billion over 4 years to detain immigrants, which is the largest portion of the budget. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, can you believe that? And
Um,
then they're setting up these prison camps like Alligator Alcatraz. Then I don't know whether you caught this in the news where they established that ridiculous rural prison there in the Everglades, and then a judge ruled that they had to clear the place out because they weren't allowed to send inmates there because it was damaging the environment. Some Indian tribes sued. Good for them. You know, they sued because it was like damaging the environment in the Everglades, which is as good a reason as any, I suppose, as long as you close the thing down. And so they moved a lot of people out of there. And then that judge was reversed, and then they've disappeared all those people. Nobody knows where those people went. Their families don't know where they went. There's hundreds of people that were in there that have disappeared completely. Were they shipped somewhere? Are they in another prison? Who knows? And this is crazy. They're not even able to keep up with the people that they're detaining to even know who they are, where they are, what they're supposed to do. They just are doing it for numbers and to make themselves, well, like most government agencies, to justify their existence.
Exactly. I do want um, to ask, once you're elected, and I always use the term once you're
Mhm.
elected because I always assume everybody I talk to is eventually going to get elected. What are your top three legislative, like what three things will you absolutely do as soon as you take that oath?
Well, but I can cite what I said last year, but it might need to be modified slightly because Trump is in office now. My three main planks last year were, of course, it was to try to establish an Ellis Island style immigration system where we welcome most people that want to come here, but in an orderly fashion where they sign in and we make sure they don't have dread diseases or they're not terrorists and that sort of thing. So that was a high priority about having a rational immigration system that actually welcomed people to this country instead of turned them away. Uh, um, I also want to end marijuana prohibition because that's been a disaster for this country. Deschedule it off the a list of controlled substances. This has been a libertarian position since the party was founded in 1971. We've been the only party consistently against the drug war and all the disaster it's caused in our cities and in our country. The drug war is much more dangerous than the drugs. And finally, the federal budget is just out of control. The national debt is out of control, and it's like a national security issue. We just can't keep spending that much money. And this includes, obviously, there's a lot of welfare programs and all, but consider this: there's all kinds of the interest on the national debt is the biggest item in the budget now, and that keeps getting added to every year. That shouldn't be going on. The military budget keeps growing way more than it needs to. Crony capitalism, all the subsidies to big business because they back the right politician. So my view was that every single department in the government needs to be cut severely across the board, no matter what. Every agency, department, program, everything. Nobody can be spared on that because if one guy is getting his cut and the other guy is not, the guy that's is going to say, hey, what about that guy over there? And then when Trump tries to do this with this Doge, him and Elon Musk trying to cut spending, they didn't really cut any spending. They just were cut like a bull in a china shop going through the government. Uh, and then while Musk was trying to cut the government, a continuing resolution was passed the same week, just refinancing the same government that he was cutting. They're just playing games. They just play
Now,
games there in Washington. And so now, running this time, we need again those three issues with fiscal sanity, the drug war, and the immigrants. But I need to stand up for a rule of law. That's a really important one now because Trump is violating it on a daily basis. He doesn't care that he doesn't have the power to do the things he's doing. He just files executive orders for just about everything. He orders people around and dares people to stop him. And the courts the lower courts stop him, but then the higher courts say, yeah, nah, Don, go ahead and do whatever you want. Tariff whoever you want. He doesn't have a right to do that. Cancel this program, cancel that program. Yeah, I want to cancel some of these programs too, but you can't just declare them canceled. That's what Congress's job is. They have to pass a law saying, no, we're not going to do this program anymore. You can't. I'm against dictatorial presidents. I don't believe in people ruling by decree. We fought a revolution about that in 1776, and that's why they have these No Kings rallies coming up because Trump's acting like King George III and a lot worse.
here is where I'm going to slightly disagree with you.
Hmm.
Mostly everything you said, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's
Hmm.
the Doge cuts. You're gonna have to follow me on this one.
Sure.
So when you cut budgets,
Hmm.
that means someone is going to lose their job.
True.
Someone's going to lose a source of income. They're not going to be able to pay their mortgage or their
Hmm.
rent. They're not going to be able to buy groceries, pay for their kids' college, pay for, all the expenses. So my question to you would be, if you're making the cuts that you're talking about, then how do you replace, how do you get with, our job creation is very low right now.
Hmm.
So are you talking about taking steps to create more jobs, or what happens to those people who will lose their job under the cuts that you're talking about?
Yes, a very good question. A very good question. Well, think of like a rock coming through your front window with a note attached to it that says Windows by ABC Windows Service. Like they're advertising their services by throwing a rock through your window, so you have to buy a new window. You intended to spend that money for something else, but they're forcing you to like buy a new window. And that's what happens with the government. They're taking so much of our tax dollars, spending so much money that we don't have with all the massive deficit spending and all, that money is being sucked out of the economy. And so if they weren't doing that, there'd be a lot more private businesses creating jobs. Trump's trying to stop businesses from creating jobs with these tariffs, which is a tax on the American people and damaging to businesses because they're going to lose business because they can't import products anymore. And there's going to be a lot more if you follow the libertarian and free market line on economics. There's going to be a lot more private sector jobs. Also, people should just be able to start businesses when they want to, without all kinds of regulations, red tape, and all that are at the federal, state, and local level for depending on what occupation you're talking about. So, a lot of these, what I say is that government employees should quit their jobs and get gainful employment and honest employment in the private sector because the government, a lot of these jobs, in fact, a large number of the jobs in government are like make work jobs that just suck the lifeblood out of the country. And these folks should get into real jobs where they're actually being productive and you know, help the economy and provide goods and services that people actually want.
Okay, so I'm gonna still disagree. So
Hmm.
here's what I'll say. So you're saying that here's where it doesn't make sense to me because I'm still thinking, okay, there's no job. I'm not gonna say there's no jobs being created because
Right.
that's a lie, but there's very few jobs being. It's not as much as it was under the Obama administration
We're
when we
sure.
had like a surge of jobs. If the private sector, because what it sounds like to me you're saying is this is based off the private sector creating jobs.
Yes.
If they say, no, we're trying to save money, and so we're going to export our services, and they're going to
Hmm.
export their business production to China or
Hmm.
Vietnam or Mexico to lower costs,
Hmm.
then my question is, where are those jobs coming from if you're talking about creating them within the US?
Well, you asked the right question there. Why? Yeah. Why are they trying to save money, and why are they not creating jobs here? And that's because all this money is being sucked up by the federal government and state governments and local government. Besides, the more government grows, that money comes out of the private sector, and not only the money, all the regulations, like all the things that oppress a lot of businesses. Sure, some of the regulations are needed for health and safety and all, but a lot of them aren't. They're just like creating hassles for businesses, like people trying to get started in business, like entrepreneurs. I'm very big on small business. People just being able to start their own business without needing permission from anybody to do it. Just start it up. And we can't do a lot of that now because people are paying such high taxes. There's so many regulations, so many burdens. A lot of these companies would never have shipped their jobs overseas way back if they weren't faced with various the cost of doing business in this country, because it's cheaper to do business in the other countries is the reason they go over there. I mean, they probably prefer to be here too. I mean, some of those countries are pretty pretty awful, and I'm sure these executives don't want to go over there and even visit their own factories in some of those countries. But they'd rather be here too, I think. But they're kind of being forced because of their obligation to their shareholders and all. to make as much money as they can, as effectively as they can, and the government's helping make that decision for them, saying, we're going to make it tough to do business in the U.S. or to be here, to have employees in this country. So, what else are these guys going to do except go to the other country? So that's the kind of thing I want to reverse, where it's a positive thing, and people want to continue to have their factories and their warehouses and their goods and services being produced in this country. And now, I can guess your next question might be as well, that might take a while for that to happen. What's going to happen to these folks that are being fired from their jobs in the government while we're
Yeah, it was
waiting for
really
that?
there. Yes, that
Yeah.
that that was literally going to be. I'm like, well, there what's it going to happen to them now?
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. If you're in a job that probably shouldn't exist, then I hate to say it, then there's going to be some pain there somewhat. The problem, what we saw with the way Trump and Musk were doing it, is they were like the kind of job, the kind of jobs they were eliminating are ones that people say, wait a minute. Why would they be eliminating those jobs? Like the person that predicts the weather. I mean, that was like one of the silliest things you could possibly imagine. They were trying to like abolish jobs without any warning or giving anybody else a chance to provide them. Like charities and non-government organizations and nonprofits
Right.
and businesses to do it. You need to give warning on all this. Like, I wouldn't fire somebody this week. I'd say your department's ending, your program's ending in a year or two. You have to make other arrangements. I do believe that's the case. I understand that you shouldn't be upheaving people's lives with no warning whatsoever. They need to, understand that there's going to be a change, and that would give them a chance to look for another job, and it would also, give more time to for more businesses to start, or for them even to start a new business if they can. So probably the best thing for them if they could.
Now, here's the thing about the businesses, and
Mhm.
I'm with you. I believe small business is the
Mhm.
engine that powers the country. Here comes the question. It's capital.
Mhm.
Um, African Americans, because I am African American,
Mhm.
tend to not have the credit to
Right.
secure funding to start a business.
Mhm.
So if the Libertarian Party believes in that, then can you use the how can you use your economic system to encourage people that probably most likely have poor credit because of poor choices, not
Mhm.
poor choices, of adverse things on their credit, or they just don't have the skills to acquire capital? Because to
Mhm.
start any business, you have to have capital to start that, because you have to hire employees, you have to
Yes.
do training, buy equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you address that issue?
That's a very good point, the part about credit. And some of that, I believe, is probably federal banking regulations, because they require banks to handle situations in a certain way. And sometimes that's probably not the best for a lot of the public, because there are black-owned banks, and I'm sure they would love to be lending to more black entrepreneurs. And there must be reasons why they're not doing so. Probably a lot of that is government regulations. I'd have to, look up and cite which specific ones they are. But you're right, though, about capital formation, and the net worth of black families is just way lower than whites, because historically there was discrimination, as you know, where it was very hard for black people to own homes and to pass wealth on generationally, like white families have been doing. There were all this goes down to local government. There, the zoning laws that stopped black people from living in certain neighborhoods, and they could only live in neighborhoods that had like multiple housing. There were no like single family homes, and they had to live in apartments, and there was no way to even not even allowed in a lot of cities to even have a place to buy a house. And so, yeah, you have to blame government for going way back in the Jim Crow era, and even in the North, this didn't have that. They still had all those limitations on black people. So that definitely lingers to today. And there certainly should be some care taken about when you're talking about providing a mortgage or providing a business loan or something. But again, banks do have to like make sure there's collateral and somebody can pay back the loan. But that certainly should be looked at very closely about past discrimination. I know the Republicans say, well, you can't look at that. That's like something that's woke or something like that, which is ridiculous. But it's true that there was discrimination. You can't hide that there was discrimination. But I guess the kind of black business person that probably could do well to start with under the system I'm talking about would be someone who's like an individual who's providing like services. He could go into business without having a lot of overhead. He or she could go into
So
business that way.
you're not talking about tech. See, I'm talking about tech and
Yes,
manufacturing. I'm thinking of all businesses. I'm not
sure.
just thinking of, food service,
Hmm.
janitorial services, 'cause those are, like you said, they have, well, no, food service has a very high cost,
Right.
but um,
Well, I'm
social
thinking of
media
like,
management.
yeah, I'm thinking of like people that like do like repairs, for example. There's like all this like, oh, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, and this isn't just a racial matter. It's like a lot of people can do really well being plumbers and electricians and repairing air conditioning and repairing computers and doing all these kind of things that we absolutely need in this country. And people are being discouraged from learning how to do these things. Saying go to college, and a lot of people don't really want to, and they can do a lot better than some of the courses that you learn in college by learning actually how to do something useful uh, versus some of the things that are taught in college. So a lot of folks can provide services like that once they've learned how to do them and be trained on that and go into business, and then you can just go from there. You can grow a business once you have a business. It's hard to just go into business and suddenly have a large business. You have to. I don't know if you've seen those pictures of Jeff Bezos when he started Amazon. It was like just like him with a hand lettered sign on the wall with like him and one other person in a little office that looked pretty dismal. And then 25 years later, he's one of the richest guys in the world. So I don't expect most people to do as well as him, but just getting it together and having a good living. I think a lot of people can do that if government got out of the way, and certainly if we recognize that people were maybe directed in the wrong path career wise.
Last, second to last question. So
Yeah,
the healthcare situation in this country is atrocious. Most
yeah,
people that file debt is because of medical expenses.
yeah,
Premiums are expected to skyrocket. And I know libertarians are some against something that I am very much passionate about. I'm for it. I will stand 10 toes down on Medicare for all. Because I see our current insurance, the way it's currently set up is just insurance companies are this unnecessary. They serve no purpose. They're a barrier between doctors and care. I have a hard time understanding what the libertarians, you as an individual libertarian candidate, but the party stands on, what do we do about healthcare? People can't afford it. People are still
hmm,
using the emergency room for primary care. You have
yeah.
a lot, there's no, rural clinics are closing down, rural hospitals are closing down, emergency rooms are crowded. What is it that you as a libertarian, what is it that you're proposing? Because I always have, this is where I probably have the most disagreement with libertarians. I can't understand, like, okay, you're against this because of why? I don't understand.
Well, consider this. The government is way deeply involved in healthcare now and so many different programs. And where we're talking about the premiums going up, this is that issue now about shutting down the government because of those subsidies for the Obamacare policyholders. Where that came in is the government is pretty much telling these health insurance companies what kind of policies to establish, how much the government's going to pay, and the premiums. And they raised their premiums to meet whatever the government was going to charge. I mean, a lot of those premiums are totally um, inflated over what they would have to be. This happens whenever the government's involved. It happened with college tuition. It went up like crazily once the government was paying, giving student loans and paying up to a certain amount for college tuition. It became unaffordable without those programs, and that's become the situation with the Obamacare policies. not only do people pay a lot, they also have high deductibles. That's part of the problem. If these subsidies weren't available from on the program, I think a lot of the health insurance companies are going to have to lower their premiums, or else they're going to get zip because the people are going to cancel their policies and not pay any premiums. So these companies have to, realize that they just can't just depend that the government's going to pay them any amount that they're charging, and they do charge ridiculous amounts, and they deny way too many claims. Like when after that CEO of United Healthcare was assassinated, they started showing that his company was denying a third of all claims that were put in. And you're right, having the health insurance companies as like the gatekeeper for your health care is a terrible system. And then alternatively, you have Medicare and Medicaid, which are government systems. And then they start also limiting what they pay doctors, and also like drug price. There's a whole slew of issues on both of those. They're different than each other, but it's basically causing a lot of people in medicine not to want to be in medicine. The health insurance companies, actually, it's all of them. The health insurance companies and the government programs are driving people out of the medical field, and because they have more time dealing with all these administrative issues than they do with actually serving patients. But if you go on the back end of that, there are limitations on how many people can go to medical school. There are actually the AMA and the government limits how many people can actually become doctors. So that makes it fewer of them available, and so they can make more money, and that hurts the consumer. So more people should become doctors. They should be welcoming doctors that have foreign degrees, nurses, nurse practitioners, people from other countries, and more trained here as well, should be welcome to help lower the costs of our healthcare system. A lot of it's the law of supply and demand. There's not enough supply, and there's a heck of a lot of demand. So I would like to get the government out of it as much as possible. But you're right about people losing their health care. And one thing I will cite is that whenever Republicans do talk about cutting spending, the first thing out of the gate for these guys is they want to cut little kids off of health care and food. Whenever they talk
Yeah, that's
about cutting,
autism treatment is
yeah,
what's going in Indiana.
yeah, so Republicans, they never want to cut anything except if you ever push them, they say, well, let's get these cheaters off of this program here that they're taking this food and this health care. But these are little kids, of course they're not trying to do that. So what I've said as a libertarian, I said, you know what, I would cut those programs too, but 953rd down on the list, not the first thing out of the gate. That's what the Republicans, like, the only thing they can come up with is taking food away from little kids. What I want to take away the subsidies to big business, the massive military budgets that are just a waste of money. These kind of things, these big budget items that are what's really damaging our economy, not the school lunch program or the kids getting medical care. What's really damaging this country are the debt, because that's one of the biggest budget items. The military, the crony capitalism, just too much control. Where billionaires are pretty much buying influence in our government, and they're getting a lot back from their investment. So that's where I would say that I would differ from Republicans, most definitely. But again, you were asking the main, if we can, there should be as much free market in healthcare as possible. How we get to that, there'd have to be a lot of steps before we got to that stage, though, because it's just not set up that way. It's a massive amount of government in healthcare. And I don't want to just, like I said before, I don't want to just throw people off of healthcare with no warning. People have to be able to make other arrangements. So we need to come up with a good plan, but also give people a chance to change their ways on that, and just don't suddenly just pull the rug out from under them. I don't believe in doing that.
Final question. How can people connect to your campaign?
Yes, my website is tedbrown.org. Very easy, tedbrown.org. You can go there and see my positions on the issues. It has not been updated to 2026 yet, but my views haven't changed any. But there's a donate button there. My phone number and email address are on there as well. Contact me, ask me questions about anything. And I certainly welcome the support of all Texans and people from across the country, because there won't be Senate candidates in a lot of states So, anyone who wants to back this campaign to promote liberty, I urge them to do so, and I certainly welcome them.
I want to thank everybody for watching. And remember, this Saturday, the podcast will be live at the No More Kings rally. This will be my first time going to one, so I will be there um, covering that. And then we'll have our other show, Justice is Here podcast at 7. Remember to subscribe to this channel. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Like this video, share, 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 share with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Share this out because we're going to be marching into 2026. We're not making apologies for running third party candidates. The two-party system is terrible. I know we can agree on that.
Yes.
So we're trying to get as many candidates to appear on this show as possible to get the message out. But just um, keep up the faith. And I will see you all Saturday. Have a fantastic evening. I'm going to play, if I can find it. I just had it over here. I'm going to play the outro, and I will see you all Saturday.